Hello everybody, Sean Carlson, Blackjack 98 Enterprises. The project that I have behind me is what my next one is. Today is Wednesday, September the 11th, 2024. Let's take a look at this one. So this might look familiar to a lot of you because I have worked on something like this before. And the guy who brought it to me says that it has been sitting for about 8 years. He forgot how to start it. And there's something wrong with the tubing right here. And so he doesn't know which one goes where, and I can tell that there is one missing on top of that. The primer bulb is not connected to the carburetor, and there is normally 3 tubes. So one goes to the carburetor, or 2 go to the carburetor, 2 go to the primer bulb, and 2 go to the fuel tank. And I will explain that as I have done before. This is a Ryobi 31 cubic centimeter 15 inch. These ones are more powerful than your regular 24, 25, 26 cubic centimeters that you might get as a home light still or Shandawa or whatever. This one is just a little bit more quieter when it runs, and therefore I will be able to work on this with no problem. And yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do before we get started, we're going to get our radio working. We're going to get ourselves a drink. It is approximately 4 p.m. It's early enough for me to drink, especially on a Wednesday. And I'm going to get my tools set up, and what we're going to do is we're going to strip this. We're going to test everything like we did before. We're going to take off the fuel tank. We're going to check it for leaks. We're going to test the carburetor. We're going to take it apart, and then we're going to look inside the cylinder, at the carburetor port as well as the exhaust port. And if necessary, if we need to take it apart, we could further into the cylinder to get all the gunk that's sitting underneath, which does not look like it's accessible through the back here. And as usual, we're going to test the wiring, we're going to test the throttle cable, we'll grease that throttle cable, we'll test the on-off switch to make sure that is working and shutting off correctly. Once we are done all that, we will work on the head. We will take this off completely and grease the head and the inside of the shaft, going directly right into the clutch. I already know that this is the clutch because of the previous ones that I had worked on. So, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have a drink here, and then we're gonna get started. One thing I'm gonna do about this video is I'm gonna show everybody where the screws come out of, because a lot of people want to know which screw goes where, what they look like, how they go in, and all that. And I'll be explaining that to you as I go along in these videos. So let me get set up. Okay, first things first, we're going to take off this cover. When we do, we need a T20 star head bit to do that. This one here, one on the side, and the other one. There's only 4 of them, okay? So when you have those screws, you're going to put them into any container, okay? I usually save all my containers once I'm done with them. These are just dollar store containers, but and when I'm done using a container, I'll save it so I can put all my screws and nuts and bolts into it. So, let me show you guys something that I have already known since I started doing this. I am taking off a screw that is holding 2 plastic pieces together. Whenever I have found I am doing exactly that, the screws have always been coarse threads. Okay, so we have a coarse thread here, screw. Now, coarse head screws are always going to be fastening 2 plastic pieces together. Okay, I just want to let everybody know that right now. When it comes time to take out the screws that are attaching to the engine, then you're going to see that they are fine threads. Okay, now another thing to keep in mind and pay attention to is the length of the screws. Not all screws and bolts are the same because some are different lengths. And The length has to do a lot with the block or the components that are being held together by the screw or the bolt. Okay, so I got the 4 bolts on. Now let's look at these. They all look like they are the same, and they probably are. Now, some may not be. Now we're just going to take this off just like that. Woohoo! Now we have access to the carburetor, and we're going to look at the air filter. That's stuff. And this is Ryobi's version of an air filter, which is just a sponge, and you can make that out of anything. But we're going to look at it for other damages too. We're going to clean this up nice and neat. Okay? Ooh, and what do you know? On every single weed whacker that comes out with it, you got the fuel oil mixture, and this one is 32:1, which means 32 parts gas, 1 part oil. Okay, so this here is the carburetor. Now we're going to hit the trigger. And this is the trigger action, okay? It looks like it's moving freely. Now, this is the choke. This is a carburetor attached choke. What choke means is it restricts the air. Right there, that choke is on. Half choke, run. So, choke, half choke, run. Okay? Now, let me explain to everybody what this means. When we have it in choke, we are restricting the air from the air filter to the cylinder. So therefore, when you prime the bulb and you pull the rewind, the gas is going into the carburetor, into the cylinder, and it will fire up. Once it warms up and fires up, then you put it into half choke, and then you try starting it. A little bit of air will be able to get into the carburetor and through into the cylinder now when you hit the regular rewind, the gas. And then you use it for about 1 minute in this position. After 1 minute, then you put it into run position, and now 100% of the air is getting into the cylinder, and this thing is running at full power once the carburetor has been properly adjusted to the timing jets. And we're going to talk a bit about the timing jets right after this. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 screws out. And before I do, I want you all to know the washers that are on these 2 bolts. Okay, they are important. Now, these 2 bolts are holding in the plate, the choke valve, as well as the carburetor to the plastic block attached to the engine. That plastic block is attached to the engine by 2 separate screws, but these 2 long screws are holding in 1, 2, 3 pieces to the plastic block. And you'll see that these are long, okay, and they will be fine threads, just so everybody knows. Before you take these 2 off, disconnect all the cables and the tubing from the carburetor, and be very mindful which is going where. This one is attached, it broke off right there, which attaches to the primer bulb, and the one underneath it attaches directly to the fuel tank. Okay, so draw a picture where they come from, make a mental note as to how they hook up to the gas tank and to the primer bulb. Alright, I will explain this to you in another drawing, but right now I'm going to take this out. Okay, so the carburetor is about ready to come out, but here is the screws that I was talking about. Okay, so remember I was saying check the orientation of them and how they look? This is them. So the top one, of course, goes into the one up there. Okay, can you ever put a carburetor upside down? And the answer is yes, you could. And your next question would be, well, how can I put the carburetor in the right way? The answer to that is this throttle cable. You see, where you hit the throttle, it's going to be on top, which is right where that hole is. This cable is not long enough to go to the bottom, so it has to go onto this side. And what if I get this face on the other side? Well, the carburetor is not going to work, and I'm about to show you why. So let's put these over there. Oh, and what do you know? They're coarse threads, okay, because they're fastened to that block, which I'm about to show you. So let's look at that. Carburetor's coming off right now. Here we go. We got to pull it off lightly and gently. Okay, there we go. Note the orientation. Now we're going to turn it around. Look at that. There is a nice gasket that is perfectly intact. Okay, now, you see that hole right there? That hole was not on the other side. That hole is on the right side, which is corresponding to that hole right there. Okay, so when you put the carburetor in, you need to match that up hole with that one there, and it will look like this. And yeah, so there you go. That's how you know which one is which. Okay, so we're gonna put the carburetor to a side, and then we're gonna look at everything else here. So this was the old fuel line. This is an old fuel line. It's actually a pretty newer one. I have not seen these ones before, but I can tell that this is a replacement. The original fuel lines crack and crumble after a few years, and it doesn't take very much to break this one. Like, it's stiff, and if I was to bend it really hard, it would crumble and break if I was to repeatedly do it. Certain primer bulbs are exactly the same way. Okay, so those screws were attached to this part right here. Now, in order to get this part off, we take off these four right here, which are just a little bit bigger than a T20. But we take this part off, and when we do, it will be attached to the gas tank. Oh my gosh. So what we're going to do is we're going to get another screwdriver. Okay, so I got those four screws off, just like I was talking about. These ones here, which came off of those four holes, okay? And they are right here. Now look at them carefully, because they are fine threads. You know what that tells me? That tells me that this plastic part was attached to the engine block. And that's exactly the reason why they were fine threads. Any screw that is attached to the engine block will always be a fine thread. Now, when it comes time to take this off the block, there's going to be a gasket in the middle. Now, if you go and rip this off like you don't give a shit, you're going to probably rip and tear that gasket into pieces, and that's not going to be good enough, and you're probably going to think that you can put goop in the middle here, which will subsidize for the gasket. If you need to make a gasket, you can do what I did. And you can make your own from this material here, which is about 1 millimeter thick. You can get at Canadian Tire, and that will do just the exact same thing. So be mindful of any parts that come through here, and this here is where you can look into the cylinder, but you can't because there's a metal valve, a metal plate covering that, which the air goes into, and it's a really loose one. So we can't really see inside the cylinder until we take this off. So if we were just to loosen this off, be mindful that this part attaches to, which embeds into the gas tank. So there's a rubber seal which is attached to that, which will come out. Okay, so I'm going to try to loosen this off. And because I can't do three things with two hands, I might have to put my phone down. And it looks like, yeah, I will have to put my phone down. But what that means is this is stuck onto there with that gasket, and somebody's probably got some glue or something on that gasket. So let me put my phone down and get back to this. Okay, so I got it off, and I'm just going to wiggle it off so you can all see what happens when you do. You don't want to rip this off at all. Stupid throttle line. Getting in my way, getting in my face. I don't like that. Let me put this on pause. Okay, so this came off exactly like I thought it would. If you look around, see this part here goes directly into there, and if you look around this mouth, you can see pieces of gaskets. So what that tells me is if you want to put it back together correctly, this has to be taken off with probably a razor blade, an X-Acto knife, whatever. But that also means it's also torn on the bottom here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to trace out a new one using that material there and replace this part here. Now the gas tank came off with it and it was just sitting up there. So this was the rear end, this is the front. Okay, see where my finger is, that indent, that space in there? That connects to this part here, and this rubber thing comes off. The rubber thing connects to the front of the gas tank. This rubber part connects to the rear of the gas tank. And they are both different sizes. As you can see, one's longer than the other. The longer one attaches to this, the shorter one attaches to that, and that shorter one can come out. It's not a big deal. It's just put in there with a tab of metal. In fact, it's not even necessary to take it out if you wanted to, but if it was loose, this is where it goes. Okay, now we can look inside the cylinder. We can sort of see the bottom of the cylinder, which doesn't look too bad, but we can also look into the cylinder with the piston, and this is all the way down. I don't think you guys can see as well as I could, but if I had a light, I could probably shine it down there. And what I want to do is I want to look at the cylinder walls for scratches or anything that would cause low compression. And that reminds me now, I should have took a compression test before I took this off, but we can do that after. Not a big deal. So what I'm going to do now is just put this aside, put this aside. We're going to look underneath this. We're going to inspect this. In fact, we're going to clean this up. And we're going to put some water into it, and then we're going to test it for leakage. There could be a leak somewhere on this gas tank, and I don't know where it is, but leaking fuel is a huge problem, and that needs to be addressed immediately. I can see that there's a crack on the fuel tank, so I might have to fix that. Okay, so we're just going to put everything aside. So what we want to do now is we want to separate this from the engine, and the way that we do that is we use a star T20, and this is one of the bolts that came out, and as you can tell, it's a short fine thread. Okay, that came out of this one here, and there's another one. There's one on the bottom right there too, and another one on the other side. These holes, okay, there's 4 of them. And the way that you take them out is you don't use a son of a bitchin' hammer drill. You use a screwdriver. Otherwise, you're going to strip them. I've stripped one before. You stick your screwdriver into there and you torque it slowly by hand until you feel a snap, like I just did. Or you hear a snap, like I just did. And then you can just regularly take it out. It would help if you had a magnetized screwdriver. Some screwdrivers are magnetized already. This one just happens to be. Okay, just like that. It comes out, and voila. You have these screws. There's 4 of them. Once you get that off, then the wiring to this needs to come out too. So get under there and disconnect those 2 tabs underneath. And then this can come off of that. Okay, we successfully got the engine off the block of the lead whacker, and be careful of this part here. This is a T10 screw which was holding the button in on the weed whacker, and we're just going to carefully, you know what, hold on. Okay, so I got it out of there, but it was a T10 screw. Now we can analyze the engine completely. Once you do get it out of here though, it's going to be a little bit loose, so let's analyze it. This is what we have here. Okay, because we were able to turn this, that means the magneto is correct. We're just going to pay attention to the wiring. There's one wire which goes from the bottom of the magneto to the switch. The switch is grounded to the rest of the engine. I have stripped these right down to the cylinder before, but we're going to find out if we need to with this, if the cylinder is not scored or scratched or anything on the piston, then we don't need to strip it down completely. But if we did, oh, this cover, look at that cover. That cover looks like it's going to come off, so we can just take the spark plug out. Just like that. And the boot, hold it into place. Let me get this off of here. Yada, yada, yada. There we go. Let's look at it. Not a crud underneath there. Nothing's broken. Okay, put that right there. Okay, so let's look at the engine. If you wanted to take this apart further, there's two screws. Or two bolts. One is right there, and the other one is right there. They are not star heads. They are heavy duty hex bolts, and this part of the cylinder has a gasket with this part of the head cylinder. And once again, if you need to replace this part, you can use this, or you can order one online, but those are heavy duty and they're probably put in with Loctite. If I was to take this out, it would be so friggin' easy to strip that head, which is why it's important to look inside the cylinder first before you decide that you want to replace the rings or the piston or the crankshaft or the connecting rod. These are important. Those are only two. All other weed whackers are different. Okay, so we're going to take off this muffler with those two right there. Those two are long, and I'm expecting them to be attached right into there. So guess what? They're going to be fine threads. Okay, and they're going to be also corroded. They're going to be very dry with carbon on them. I'm going to take those out so we can look into the cylinder through the muffler. Okay? Okay, so once again, let's look at these. The came out of right here, right? And they're long. They're noticeably long. You cannot help but think that these two are meant for the muffler just by looking at them. Okay? And once again, use a screwdriver and not a son of a bitch an impact drill. Now this is going to be loose. There's going to be a gasket between the cylinder head and the muffler, so pull it off gently. There we go, and voila. See, there's a gasket right there. That needs to be intact. That needs to be a heat-resistant type of gasket, which you can also use this, or you can buy one online or make your own or whatever. But we're just going to look at it. This is going to be cleaned inside and out. And what I usually use on a muffler is Easy Off Oven Cleaner, because Easy Off Oven Cleaner has a 100% effect on the carbon, which is around the area here, as well as on the engine. So we're going to put that aside. We're going to have a drink. Now we're going to be able to look at the cylinder here. So it's not going to stand up on its own, but I am able to turn it on the other side here. So let's look at it. Okay. There's no noticeable lines or scoring that I'm seeing right there anywhere. There's liquid, but that's probably the gas and the oil or the mixed gas or whatever that could be forming in the bottom of the piston or the top of it because of the gravity. Okay, so this is how it sits when it's running. The top of the piston is actually on the bottom of the engine, so it's going down, but I refer to it as the top. This is usually the bottom, there's usually the top. Okay, so if there's any crud, if you're having a problem with your engine, there's probably something in this area here on the bottom which will leak out once you take out your spark plug. And if we take the spark plug out, and I'm pretty sure there's probably going to be liquid coming out, it could be water, it could be bits and pieces or whatever that got sucked into the cylinder through any means necessary. So we're going to take off the spark plug and we're going to look at the top of the piston. Okay, so the spark plug is out. We're going to analyze it. I don't know if you can see it very well, but yeah. You can tell that it doesn't look too bad. There's a bit of crap on it. We're going to soak this in Easy Off Oven Cleaner, then we're going to test it for conductivity to see if it sparks. Now we're going to turn this over to see if there's anything dripping. Nothing. Okay, so now we're going to look at the top of the piston by turning this, and I got two hands again. So, getting this all the way up there, I can tell that there's crap on the top of the piston, which is the carbonization, which is not a big deal. But if I was, you guys can't really see into the cylinder like I can, but I'm looking all around at the cylinder walls, and I'm looking for lines or scoring, which would affect the pressure and the compression of the chamber. There's nothing. So what that tells me is what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some Easy Off into here, let it sit, clean it out. This engine is now ready to be cleaned out completely. If I wanted to, I could take off that magneto and clean that out too, but I'm not going to bother. But I'm looking at this part here. I just looked at the cylinder. There's nothing wrong with the cylinder inside, so therefore this does not need to come apart completely. Okay, now let me look at the bottom of this part here. There's no clutch. I had worked on a Ryobi before where this was a clutch, and there was a flywheel onto there where it expanded if it got fast enough, and some of them have it and some of them don't. This particular model does not have a clutch. It's just a flywheel which connects onto the shaft. Okay, so in order to take that off, oh my gosh, you would have to, oh my gosh, that's a good question. How would I work on that? It has to do with this bolt right here, which is attached to this. I'm pretty sure you would twist that off. You twist this off to get this off, and then pull that out where there's a fly key attached to the crankshaft, which gives you access to the bolts that are holding these in. That's if you wanted to do that, and to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with this engine, so I'm not going to bother taking this off. But then again, to show the public, I would, but I'm not going to. Okay, so while the engine is being internally cleaned with Easy Off, we're going to focus on the fuel system. This is the fuel system. This is the fuel tank. This is the carburetor. This is the primer bulb. A lot of you want to know, if there's 3 lines, how the hell do you hook a son of a bitchin' thing up for it to run properly? So let's look at this picture. Okay, so this is your carburetor. The arrows points to fuel flow. This here is the air filter going from the gas tank, and it's going into the carburetor, which look like that, which looks like a J, which means this was in right here. Those 2 nibs are different. One's straight, right there, that's straight. That one looks like a J, all right? So the gas goes into there, through the carburetor, and then out that little nib on top that I just showed you. It goes from there into the short stack of the primer bulb. The short stack of the primer bulb, you can tell there's 2 different lengths, one there and one there. If you look very closely, which I can't see on camera, it says in. Oh, you know what? Maybe you can see it. It says in. The short one where the fuel goes into and comes out the top one. Okay? And then it goes through the fuel tank. So it comes out the long shaft, goes into the fuel tank as a return. And then the gas goes back again into, from the fuel filter to the carburetor. And each time that you hit the primer bulb, it's acting as a pump to make that fuel flow in this direction. So pay attention to those lines and how they look. Okay, I'll just now Some of you already know, some of you don't. These two holes right here in the gas tank are different sizes. One is 3mm, one is 4mm. This is the 3mm, or the 4, yeah, 3, 4. The bigger one, the smaller one. And those correspond to the sizes of the nibs on the gas tank, or the carburetor. See how the diameter of this nib is shorter or narrower than this one? Okay, certain carburetors, not just this one, have different size of nibs on them, the fuel ports. And sometimes they're on one side. On this particular model, they're on opposite sides and they look different. So one's skinny, one's fatter. Okay, so pay attention to those when you're putting these together. So you can use a different size of line on both right here. This can be a smaller one, this can be a bigger one, this can be one of them, but they have to go over these two small ones just as equally as they go onto those ones on the carburetor and through the fuel tank. So let's talk about that. Let me get a pen here. Okay, so let me flip this over. Oh, so let's look. This here is a sectional diagram of a line. This is the same type of one, but it's thicker. So the diameter between here is the same as this one here, but it's thicker, and this one's smaller. Okay, those distances right there are important because of those holes that are in the gas tank. And the way that you find out which holes are, you can take a metric drill bit and just put them in there and drop it through the hole comfortably, and you'll see that one will fit and the other will not. Okay, a 4mm will fit in here, but not into this one. This one's a little bit small. You'll notice that right away. Try to find an interior diameter which will fit onto this, as well as the primer bulb, and they will also be big enough to fit through these holes here. Okay, so Frank, oh my gosh. And we gotta analyze this gas tank. We gotta work on that. So that there is the fuel system for this weed whacker, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'm gonna go and rinse this out. Okay, so before I go any further, I want to touch base on everybody about the sizes of these two holes. We have two different drill bits right here. Okay, this one's a 4mm, this one's a 5. The 5mm goes through here just barely tightly. Okay, but it does go in. See that? It's coming in and out. It does not go into here. It will not fit at all. But this one will. When I went and stuck this one in, it was in there loosely, like I just went in there like no problem. But look carefully, I am able to tilt it. What that means is, even though this is a 4mm drill bit, this hole is about 4.5mm. If I was to take a ruler and measure that, I'm pretty sure it would show up as 4.5. So be very careful of this. 5, 4.5, or 4. Some are 4, some are 4.5. This one just happens to be 4.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for gas lines which are tight enough, which are bigger than these, so that way when they go in, they squeeze into these and have a hard time coming out. So that way there's no gaps between the outer edge of the fuel line and this hole here. Otherwise, if there was, fuel would leak out. Okay. Okay, everybody, so I noticed that there's a hairline crack, and you can see it there too. What I'm going to use to seal that is some JB Weld. Steel reinforced epoxy. So I already got the mix there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to seep it into the crack, and then I'm gonna put it around the surfaces. But what I just remembered is to take some light sandpaper and rub it around the cracked surface so the JB Weld will stay. You'll see what it looks like after I'm all done, but that is what I'm going to use to seal that crack. Okay, so now we're going to look at the carburetor. This is the part that faces the cylinder, and we already established that because of that hole there. This is the part that faces the air filter, and there needs to be no hole anywhere. Air goes into this hole, period. So we're going to look at the bottom. It's an original carburetor for this because it has got the manufacturer name of the carburetor, Zama. There is normally markings on the carburetor with numbers when you have an original name on there. On a Chinese knockoff, there is usually no numbers and no name, but sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. This red and white part here is the limiter caps, and what these do, they prevent people from tampering with the idle jets, and they are set to the manufacturer settings so that way when it's running they don't come loose and you can't get at them. Okay, but that's what we're going to do. We're just going to lift these off. We're going to take everything apart on this carburetor and we're going to analyze it some more. When it comes time to take this gasket off, you're going to need to peel it off nicely. As you can see, there's indents in there which are nicely formed for the previous parts. Take this off with a razor blade or an X-Acto knife or something. Do not wreck this. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. It is now going to be in pieces. Okay, so this is the carburetor in pieces. Limiter caps, encapsulator. So what I want everybody to do is pay attention to these two jets. This one here is the low, this one here is the high, and they go into their corresponding hole. On the left there, on the bottom left where that tube is, you can see a little L. And right above the other one, you can see a bit of a H. The H is right there. The L is right here. So see, the H goes to that one, which means, and as you can see, they're different lengths. Now, I want everybody to know, not all carburetors are the same, because this one could be shorter than this one. They could be the same length, or they could be just like this. This one is longer than the other. Depending on the manufacturer, you will be unable to switch one jet to the other on a different manufacturer. Okay? So pay attention to that. Now that I got this apart completely, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flush everything out, all those ports, all those holes, with some WD-40, some brake cleaner. I'm going to make sure everything's flowing through here nicely. Not to mention, these parts here are replaceable. I will be replacing these parts in particular on the carburetor, and everything will be put together correctly, and we're going to do a drinking test. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a container full of liquid and we're going to press the primer bulb to make sure that this is drinking correctly. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so when it comes to replacing these black parts here, all I need to do is just go to my stash, just like that. I have one right here that is already set to be picked out. La 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 la. And I take a package and I put it down just like that. I take this here, put it back into my assortment, close the lid, and I start replacing parts. Just like that, ladies and gentlemen, that's how I do things. Now it comes time to put these parts into the carburetor, but a lot of you are wondering, how the hell do I do that? Which goes where and what the fuck is next? Okay, so let's agree that this cover goes right here. Okay, so if you look at the holes on there, they line up with the pinholes of these. See the pinholes that are sticking out? They go into the corresponding hole right there, and you have to move this. You have to move this in order to get that on there properly. And of course I can't do two things with one hand, but darn it, hold on. This is what it's supposed to look like. Do you see that? That throttle is going to get into the way, but those holes match up. Okay, so now let's take this off. course it's stuck. Okay, now put this over here. We agree that it goes on just like this, right? So the part that goes onto here is the diaphragm. It's the black piece right here. This is the diaphragm. Goes onto there first. Not this part, but this part needs to be on this surface, and those holes needs to match up like they do. And then this goes on top of the gasket, okay? And then this goes on top of that. And then you put the screws in. And this, and then secure it down. But before you do that, before you do anything like that, anything else, I want everybody to know this is dry. The minute you put it onto there and start pressing the primer bulb, air is going to seep in through the sides of this, the thickness of this. It's going to seep in and into the carburetor, and it's going to create air gaps, and you're going to have a spongy carburetor when you press the primer bulb. So I'm going to show you guys something. In my arsenal, I have some grease here. Oh, crap. Now normally what I do is I use this grease. There's some to the lid. I dip my finger into there, smear it around, and then I grab this gasket, and then I put it on both sides. This grease on both sides of this gasket and on the ends, so that way this is now somewhat wet. This will create an airtight seal when you put it back into the carburetor for normal, regular usage. A lot of you might be swearing up and down, like, no, you don't do that. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This guy's a fucking retard. Don't listen to him. Oh my gosh, that's so stupid. I don't want to listen. I'm going to quit watching this video. And gosh, fucking, and you're just going up and down. But I have done this before. Several occasions. There needs to be an airtight seal in this carburetor. Some of you would use glue. Some of you would use whatever the hell it is that you would use at your disposal, but it's this part here which has got the indents in it, which press against that gasket to create the air seal. The grease just helps ensure that it's going to stick onto this part as well as the black part onto the surface here. So now once we got that, let's flip it over. Now we're dealing with the diaphragm part. And in this particular case, on this surface here, we're going to put this guy. We're going to put the gasket down first onto the carburetor. Like I said, once again, soak it with a little bit of grease. Make sure the holes line up as they do. See that? Yes. Oh, backwards. Okay, no big deal. Holes line up. Okay. Then the star of this goes on star side down. Okay, star side down. Holes line up like they do, like there, okay? And then the lid goes on. Okay, so there's only 2 holes. But you see this part here? That needs to match up with this hole here on the end. And it goes in just like this. Just like that. That's how it's supposed to look. Okay? So, let me put that onto both of these gaskets and then put these together. But I still have to flush them out, and I use brake cleaner and WD-40 to flush all the ports out. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is how exactly you flush out a carburetor and get the surfaces so they're airtight. And don't confuse these. Make sure you know which one is which when you're putting them back into the holes, okay? These get flushed out too. So now that I've said that, I'm going to put this all back together, and then we're going to do a test. I just thought I'd add something right here. If any of you ever get frustrated enough that you forgot which one is which, because one's longer than the other, right? Either they're the same or one's longer than the other. I have an idea of how you can find out which one is which. Take a screwdriver that's just small enough to go into that hole. So you're going to put it into this hole and this hole. You're not going to jam it in there, but you're just going to put it in there lightly. Just lightly. Put a mark on that end and then compare it to the other hole. Okay? And just lightly seat it. Just put it in there nicely. And then just compare the markings. And you'll find that one goes in deeper than the other one. Okay? And that's all that you need to do. You don't need to jam it in there, otherwise you're going to ruin it. Just lightly. Okay? And that's how you can find out which one goes to which. Sean Carlson, Blackjack 98 Enterprises. If you have two different sizes of jets and you don't know which one goes which, take a screwdriver and put it in there lightly. Compare the depth of both holes and you will find out which one goes into which hole. So when it comes to putting these jets in, I got them put in, but I didn't put the limiter caps on there because we still need to adjust the carburetor when we got it running. Now I got them set in all the way and pulled out a turn and a quarter each. This one is turned and a quarter, and so is this one. This is the low and this is the high. When we come to adjust our weed whacker at full speed, when we're got the entire unit, we're going to hit this one first, the high jet. That's when we're going to hit it on full throttle after we get it started. And this is going to adjust the speed of the head, which is going to be really fast or really slow. We're going to do, we're going to set this right in the middle between where it kills if you put it too far in and if you kill it too far pulling out. I'm going to go into more detail about setting these in another video. Right now, I just got these ones pulled out a turn and a quarter. Okay, now that we got our carburetor all back together, we're going to test it for drinking. And what that means is we're going to take some tubing, connect it to the primer bulb, to the carburetor, to a mock gas tank, exactly the way that we had shown you before. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go into my arsenal here with all the tubing, and I'm going to pull out some ones that will fit correctly into the gas tank. Remember, one of them needs to be bigger than 5 millimeters and the other one needs to be bigger than 4.5, and I got that. Okay everybody, so we've got everything all set up here with the correct hoses that are supposed to be used for the gas tank. Okay, so if you notice, this one is a little bit thicker than the other, and that's exactly what we're supposed to need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the primer bulb, and you should see the liquid coming from out of there, going into the carburetor, through the carburetor, from one end up here to the primer bulb, and back into the mix here. So here we go, and you're going to watch me do it. Okay? I'm going to press it down, and then when I lift up, it's going to suck up. See that? There we go. What that means is it's working. See, it's coming up, and it's going to fill up the primer bulb. And now I'm going to put this, position it so it points back right into there. Okay, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's just, there we go. See? It's coming out. Nothing is leaking. This is an airtight arrangement, and there's when I press the primer bulb, when you look at the carburetor, nothing is leaking. It should be soaking if there was. Now let's look at the fuel line. There is no air bubbles at all in the fuel line. And if you're wondering what it is that I used, it's actually just brake fluid and WD-40. there might be a small amount of bubbles, but there's not even any from the WD-40, which means it's going into the carburetor and coming out, going back into the primer bulb, and that's what the primer bulb was supposed to look like. A little tiny bubble, just like that. That's perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fully functional, perfectly running carburetor that drinks exactly like it's supposed to. Okay? So, now what we can do is put the carburetor and the primer bulb and everything back together like it's supposed to, and then we can work on the head. Okay? As a result of that gasket around here shredding as I took it off, now I'm going to trace another one using a protractor and a pencil. Luckily this is a perfect circle, so this should work out nicely. Okay, holy effing crap. This one took a little bit of a while. So this was like 35 minutes to make out of a dollar store X-Acto knife and a hole puncher. But I got it. It fits onto there. We cannot put this all together. Frick. Okay, so it's the morning. It's the next day. It's Thursday, September 12th, around 8 o'clock in the morning. I got that leak fixed, taken care of with JB Weld. It's holding up pretty well. I just did a water leak test on the entire thing, and there was 0 leaks coming out anywhere, even from here. If you're wondering how I got the gas tanks through there, if I fed them through the bottom or through the top, the small one I fed through the bottom, the big one I fed through the top. The way that I did that was as just cut one end off just so I can get that through the hole, and then I grabbed it with a pair of pliers and pulled it through. Now this one's a little bit fatter than the hole, as I tried to explain, so that way there is no leaks. This one is fatter than the hole. They're both fatter than the hole, so that way there's no leaks at all from the gas, and there was no leaks from the water. After doing a water test, I went and stuffed in there some paper towel, some toilet paper, some tissue paper, whatever. Anytime that you are working on any gas tank, this is technically what you should do. Stuff it with something that's going to absorb the smell and the odors and everything else that is in the gas tank, okay? It's a little bit safer. I'll use that. Now I can put this back onto the engine with this behind it. And here is my screws. I know which one is which. Believe it or not, because I've done this so many times, I can just reach in there and grab 4 and put that on the back of this. Alright. Okay, so we have the engine all put together. And I just want to show everybody the fuel line hookup. Now, I put this together exactly like the field diagram that we drew previously, and this is it. Okay, so everything was put together. All I gotta do now is just put gasoline into there and then hit the primer bulb and watch the fuel flow with all 3 of these. So the way that it would work is it would come from here, go through the carburetor, then go through the top one, go through the primer bulb, fill that up, and then it would exit out here. Okay, that's the fuel flow. And now that we're done with the engine, now what I can do is start working on the line head. So I'm going to put this to a side, and then we're going to get the shaft up here and start working on that. Okay, so now we came to the part where we're going to take off the head completely right off the shaft. So watch me do it. This is the bump head. We're going to test that. We're going to twist it off. Okay, take a look. There's no markings on it whatsoever. This is the line that was in it. Ooh, there is markings on this. It says rewind line in this direction. Did they do that? No, they did not. So this could not have possibly been working correctly for them because they wound along the line the wrong way. And we're going to talk about that. Oh, look at the spring on the back. Everything looks to be fine. Now this part, okay, so let's see here. There is 4 screws. There's one there, one on the bottom, and one on the other side. You can get them off of the star head, cross head, Phillips. Cover off. Okay, so now we take this part off here, and I need this one is a 3/8. 3/8 works. Getting that off. No. No. Pliers. Okay, frig, I'm gonna take that off and just gonna put some pot. Okay, once we got that off, then we can slip that ring off, just like that. And this, if I remember correctly, was a thing right on the bottom. A thing, which holds it to the shaft. Oh, and it's a star, what do you know? A T20. This holds the line to shaft, which you cannot take it out. And there we go, we got it out. So I'm just gonna put this down right here. Now we're gonna look at this. Right into there is all the gears, where there's actually no gears. It's just one piece, to be honest with you. You can't really take this apart. There's that, you see that washer right there, that star washer right there? If you wanted to shred that right off, then this plastic piece can come off of this, but then that would be it. This here is one piece, so what you can do is just clean the hell out of this. Take a wire brush, clean it off, and then smear some grease right into that hole there. That's where the shaft goes into. Okay, now let's look at the shaft part. The shaft is right here. You can actually pull it out from this end. And yeah, it just comes out completely. Let me take it out. Look at that, eh? See, it's one end. Here. Look at both ends. You see that? You could only have taken it off one way, which meant getting this off first. In order to get the shaft, you gotta take this off. the way that I just showed you, okay? Now we can grease this entire thing and the outer shaft too, okay? And that'll be that. I'm just going to clean everything up as I go along and put it back together. Okay, so I'm using that grease again to do the shaft as I'm putting it in there. I'm putting the grease on there, then twisting it in, okay? And I'm going to do that all the way along till the very end there. But that's what's happening, and then you can see the picture, the video. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the line on. Now, if you read the directions, it says rewind the line in that where the arrow is pointing. But when you look at this, the person did not do that. So let's look at something else. Where's the other part here? I don't think, oh, it's right here. So there's two ports where the line comes out. So what we can do is exactly what they have here. They got two holes. We can just take a length and pinch it at the middle and put the middle part right there and then rewind it. I'm gonna show you exactly why you need to rewind it in that direction. Okay, so this is our weed whacker. We're using it. Go left, right, left, right. If you look right on the end here, you're gonna see two screws. That is the cutter guard. So when you push the bump knob, the line comes out and hits that and cuts it to make it the desired length. And what's that length? It's right up here. 15 inches. So distance between the center of that knob to there is 7.5 inches, making a 15-inch diameter. Okay, now, as a result of the line cutting in this direction, we need to wind it onto the spool the opposite direction. Okay, now, if these were not on here, if these wording was not in here, on some weed whackers, you don't get wording at all. It's all rubbed off. You just look at the cutter guard, and that will tell you the direction that it's supposed to be turning. So let's look at this. This goes on here like that. And we are supposed to wind it this way, right? Which means it's supposed to go around this direction. Clockwise looking up is counterclockwise looking down. And that is actually the direction that it's telling you to, even on there. Okay, so what we got to do is we got to take this line out, put the proper line in, and then we're going to spool it in that direction. And then once we do, we put it on like this, and then we feed one end through a port, and then feed the other end through the ports, and then just put it in, and then lock it with that nut. Okay, just how you see me take it off is how we're going to put it back on. Okay, so I got it all spooled. This is what it should look like when you go to put it in. And let's look at the arrows. Arrow says counterclockwise. Did I do that? And when you look at it, yes, I did. Now there's a reason why that is when you go to put it on there, okay? So let's forget about putting this on and look at the mechanics of how this exactly works. So your weed whacker is spinning really fast. It's got the length of line here, which is up to here, has centrifugal force. Even though it's only a few grams, when it's spinning really fast, it gains weight, and that weight is pulling on that line. So the force of the line is spinning it clockwise, right? So, let's see here, it's spinning this way, but when you hit the bump head, you see these points right here? I'm going to use this straw. These points right here, these 6 points. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, okay? See those edges? It's a flat surface right here. So that flat surface touches the bottom of here, okay? And the width of those teeth, they hit against this part right here when it's spinning. You hit the bump head, and it goes down from this height, and it hits the ground. And then it goes under there. You see that there's a little gap? There's a gap on all of them. Okay, so it hits this when it's working. You hit the bump head on the ground, it goes under and underneath and hits this little knob right here. There's other little knobbies, as you can see. Now, those knobbies in particular have a bit of an angle on them. This is a corner, this is the flat, goes up, across, and at an angle. So it's pretty much like this. That's the angle. This is straight up and down. This is the angle at which it's at. And that is what helps it skip this and hit this flat spot here once you release the bump head. Okay? So you hit the bump head, goes down, hits this, skips up, and then poof, hits this. Okay? So that is what releases the distance between this and this is how much line is being released when you hit the bump head down. That's a bit of an explanation. Some of you might not get it. Some of you do. Some of you might not. But I'm just going to go ahead and put the line in. One goes in like that. The other goes in like that. Okay, there we go. Let me put this in carefully. And of course I can't do three things with two hands. Let me put this down. Okay, so once you got the line in, now we're going to test the bump head. So we're going to grab both lines, we're going to pull on them slightly, and then we're going to hit this. Down, pull, out. See that? I'm going to put my thumbs right up against it. Down, pull, out. See that? We're going to do it again. Thumbs right up against there. Push this. Down, pull. Do you see that there's the same distance? Okay? Right on. So, as I was saying, when this is spinning, it's going to hit this and it's going to cut it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim that off anyways. Right there, I'm going to take some pliers, trim it off, and then put the engine back into the body. Okay, we got this ready to go now. So the engine is all put back together. The shaft is clean and the head has been cleaned out, greased, and I put new line in there at about 15 feet if it spins correctly and is winded correctly. The throttle line has been greased. I just got to reattach it right there. As you can see, it's not a big deal. When it comes to adjusting this, I'm going to leave this cover off so that way I can access those easier and just put it back on once I got those properly tuned up. What we're going to do is we're going to watch the fuel flow now through the primer bulb. And as you can see, it's coming out of the carburetor like it's supposed to. It's filling up primer bulb. Yes, everything's working. Yes. It doesn't snap back just because I think the fuel filter is a brand new one. And I could have used a different one, but that's fine. This is a 32-to-1 gas mixture that I just put into the gas tank. And as you can see, there is nothing leaking anywhere from that area. I don't see anything leaking at all, or dripping, in fact. So now I know that that leak is fixed. Okay, so what's next is I take this to a location, I start it up, I get it running, you can watch me do it. I'm going to take a screwdriver. Oh, let's see what I have here. There's my screwdriver. And then I'm going to attack these two jets here as I go. And I'm not going to forget to put in which I'm going to do right now. Okay, throttle line is attached. Yay. Okay, so now comes the time where I'm gonna start it up. Yeehaw. Okay, so we're gonna go through a few starting procedures. This here's the throttle. This here's the grip. This here's the on-off switch. It is in the on position. This here is the choke. Okay, so it's a good thing that I have it off because this is what we're going to be looking at. Okay, so I printed out the manual and the startup and stopping instructions are right here. So you can either watch this video or you can listen to it. But I'm going to be reading everything about this, so you should be able to listen to it, okay? So, look at the pictures. This has to do with the choke positions. So full choke, partial choke, run, which is on here, okay? Now, number 1, mix gas with oil. Fill fuel tank with fuel oil mixture. See oil and fuel mixing instructions. When you look on the cover, it says 32 to 1, and that is what I currently have inside the gas tank. Put the on-off switch control in the on position. So flip it up. Fully press and release the primer bulb 5 to 7 times. Fuel should be visible in the bulb. And number 4, place the choke lever in the full choke position. In this case, it would be to the far left when you're looking at it. Number 5, with the unit on the ground, squeeze the throttle control and pull starter rope briskly. Continue pulling until the engine sounds as though it wants to run. Normally 2 to 5 pulls. Note, squeeze the throttle control until the engine has started and warmed up. Number 6, place the choke lever in partial choke position. So that means partial choke, half choke, but it's between full choke and run. So number 7, pull starter rope briskly 1 to 3 times to start the engine. 8, if the engine does not start, repeat steps 4 through 7. Note, if the engine floods while trying to start, place the choke lever in the run position, squeeze the throttle control. Pull the starter rope briskly. The engine should start within 3 to 8 pulls. Number 9, squeeze the throttle control to warm up engine for 5 to 10 seconds. Place the choke lever in the run position. Note, choking is unnecessary when stopping a warm engine. Put the on-stop control in the on position and start in with the choke in the partial position. Stopping instructions. Release your hand from the throttle control. Allow the engine to cool down by idling. Put the on-off stop switch in the off position. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what you're going to see me do when you see me start that up. Okay, everybody, the engine is put back onto the body. The shaft is all cleaned. The head has been oiled and greased. I got brand new line onto there. The throttle has been reconnected, greased, oiled, and the fuel flow. You can see the fuel flow. The primer bulb is full. It's coming out of the tank. It's going back in like it's supposed to. You might see air bubbles, but that's just because of the rush of the air going in. But it doesn't matter because there's no leaking. There's nothing leaking on this whatsoever when I press that primer bulb. Okay, so the carburetor is drinking like it's supposed to. The primer bulb is hooked up to the gas tank like it's supposed to. Everything is nice and tight. I'm gonna leave this cover off so I can do the adjustments onto the carburetor right there. And then once I get that adjusted properly, then everything can go back together. So what you're gonna see me do now is start it up according to the starting instructions at a disclosed location, and I'll get it fine-tuned for the customer. So here we go. Oh yeah, everybody. You seen from that video there that I got it running and I got it adjusted accordingly. So yeah, I'm very happy about that. There's a few things wrong with it. When the customer brought it to me, it was missing certain fuel lines. The original ones were corroded and they were stiff and they bent off, which is quite common for those Ryobis. And the next thing, which was the metering needle, which is, I'm going to show you this thing here. You see this? This was the wrong piece. Somebody had went and put this in, and it was in a permanently locked off position because it was too long. So with the arsenal that I had, you see me with the carburetor repair kit, I swapped them out, and the metering tab was bent. So your metering tab, which goes up and down like this with the diaphragm, it was bent. So it was not turning up at all. It was like stuck in this position here. So I took some pliers and straightened it out and bent it up just a little bit. And then I went and put everything back together. And even though in the video you seen me that it worked, I don't know how it worked the first time, then didn't work the second time. But after putting in the new part, then I got it to work. So the gas tank was also cracked, and I fixed it with JB Weld. As you had seen, I did a water test. There was no leaking of the water, and once I put gas into it and got it running, even then, after I got it running, when you see me adjust it, it was still not leaking. And that has a lot to do with the fact that the fuel lines which are going into the gas tank were bigger than the hole and were pressing against it, creating a tight fit. I absolutely believe everything needs to be tight and solid and leak-free whenever you're dealing with gas, oil, grease, or any other solvents that have to do with the environment, especially weed whacker. If there is gas that is leaking when you're weed whacking, you're going to kill somebody's lawn. There's going to be spots and dead grass and yellowness and brownness and right after you're done, because the gas that was leaking was getting into the lawn and killing things. I don't like that. Whenever I work on something, it has to be leak-free, and with a weed whacker I can do that. With a lawnmower I can do that. With any other small engine, it is extremely important that everything be leak-free because of the environment. Okay, so having said that, everybody, thank you for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and make comments, positive comments only on any of my videos. I hope this has helped a lot of you, and I will answer questions if you have them for me. In fact, I will even make some special videos for you if you want to see something in particular that I may have missed. So until then, thank you. Have a good day. The time right now, it's approximately 2:15. And that is an hour and 15 minutes later than when I can get my rum, so I'm gonna go, because I got this, I'm gonna get so freaking pissed right now. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna celebrate. Then I gotta return this to the customer later today, so yay, that's good. Have a good day, everybody.